Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our summer series webinar on waste management. My name is Olivia Burns. I am an environmental specialist for Clark County's Office of Sustainability, supporting the All in Clark County initiative. Joining us today is Brianna Case, an environmental scientist with the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection, presenting on waste management for us today. Before I pass it over to Brianna to share effective ways to manage materials and waste sustainably, I will share a few tips to enhance your presentation experience and navigate the website. Firstly, you can translate the entire meeting page and/or the live audio into another language by clicking the Translate button and selecting a language from the Translate drop-down menu. Closed captions are also available for this presentation by clicking the CC button on the bottom right corner of the presentation page. Viewers may call in to hear audio, text in comments, or leave a voicemail by dialing the 855 number located just above the presentation page. Another way to interact is by putting comments and questions in the chat box next to the presentation live stream. So if you think of a question during the presentation, please put them there and we will have time to review those at the end. Lastly, if you have any difficulties viewing or hearing the presentation at any time, please refresh the meeting page. Now I'll pass it over to Brianna to get us started. Thank you, Brianna.
Thanks, Olivia. I will share my screen. Perfect. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. As Olivia said, my name is Bree Case, and I'm an environmental scientist with the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection, and more specifically, the Bureau of Sustainable Materials Management. And I really appreciate the opportunity to present on how our Bureau is engaged with sustainability, particularly from a waste and materials management perspective. So today I'll be covering our Bureau's sustainability goals, and I'll also do a high-level overview of how sustainable materials, of our sustainable materials management plan, and then look at some of the sustainability initiatives we're currently working on or will be working on in the near future. I'll also be talking about how our Bureau engages with stakeholders to promote sustainability. And then at the end, I'll end on how the public can get involved and stay up to date. So the Bureau of Sustainable Materials Management is one of 11 bureaus that make up the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection. And each bureau focuses, on their area of expertise. And they have their own mission too. So BSMM was originally called the Bureau of Waste Management, and we had mainly focused on the end-of-life management of solid and hazardous waste. And what I mean by end of life, think disposal or landfilling. But about 5 years ago, the Bureau shifted its approach to also encompass the entire life cycle of materials, not just the end of life, in order to promote a more sustainable management of resources. And we still do have a heavy focus on, permitting landfills and ensuring hazardous waste is handled properly. These are definitely very important public health and safety concerns for us, to work with. But now we're also expanding into sustainability in addition to that health and safety piece. And, at the end of the day, sustainability should complement and enhance the protective aspect of our efforts. And with this shift towards incorporating sustainability into waste management, our Bureau actually developed and published Nevada's first ever Sustainable Materials Management Plan in 2022. And to give you some background information, about every 5 years, we're required to update the state solid waste management plan. And the last solid waste plan was mostly focused on landfilling. But in our most recent update, we wanted to align, that solid waste management with sustainable materials management principles, hence the new name, Sustainable Materials Management Plan. And you may be wondering, well, what the heck is sustainable materials management? Well, it's a framework that views waste as a system inefficiency, and the goal of applying this framework is to reduce waste and the negative impacts associated with making and using products. And for the waste that cannot be avoided, this approach looks for ways to use those wastes as resources and inputs into new processes. So, this approach promotes a more circular system with a focus on reducing waste, reusing materials, recycling, and composting. And landfilling is viewed as a last resort. Also, the sustainable materials management approach takes into account various impacts of a material throughout its life cycle, not just the impacts at the end of life. And as you can imagine, at each stage of a material's life cycle, like the image shows, you have the material extraction, manufacturing, transportation, and use. At each of these stages, different types of resources and energy are used, and different amounts of emissions and wastes are generated. So, by understanding that whole picture, we can find better ways to manage and use materials and limit the impacts across the entire lifespan of those materials. Excuse me. Also, by viewing products and materials through this life cycle perspective, it can help us better understand that when a product ends up in a landfill, more impacts are occurring than just the disposal of that item. So, in other words, when you throw away a product and you don't make the most productive use of it, all of the upstream inputs are lost and the associated environmental impacts are intensified. So, based on the goal of moving Nevada to a more circular and sustainable management of waste and materials, we built the Sustainable Materials Management Plan around 5 main points. First, we wanted the plan to provide a comprehensive picture of the current state of Nevada's solid waste, hazardous waste, and materials management systems. And the plan does provide a good summary of the data for the last 10 years for those different categories. And then, so yeah, if you're interested to see kind of how Nevada um, the data behind solid waste and hazardous waste and recycling, definitely check out this plan. Um, and also, this plan identifies ways to align waste management efforts with sustainable materials management practices, such as source reduction, recycling, and other diversion solutions. And then for the waste that must be disposed of, the plan emphasizes managing the waste in a safe and an environmentally protective manner. And then finally, we wanted this plan to be actionable. So the plan provides 8 primary objectives and over 70 recommended action items for these objectives. And we prioritize these action items based on some criteria such as urgency, impact, feasibility, and stakeholder support. And some of the top action items identified included better communication and education with the public, as well as finding and creating sources of funding to address solid waste and recycling infrastructure needs, addressing special waste like batteries, and illegal dumping. And the plan ends on how various stakeholders, such as residents, businesses, and local governments, how they can, work together to ensure a more sustainable management of materials. So I highly recommend checking out the plan and at least, skimming through the last 2 sections to see those recommended action items and what role you or your organization can play. Because at the end of the day, successful waste and materials management is a shared responsibility between multiple entities and the public. And the plan can be found on NDEP's website. And probably the easiest way to get to it is just Googling Nevada Sustainable Materials Management Plan. And it should pop up as like the first thing on Google. Another important feature of the Sustainable Materials Management Plan is that it acknowledges the opportunity to integrate with other sustainability efforts, such as climate initiatives and resource and conservation efforts. For example, the 2021 Nevada greenhouse gas emissions inventory projected that the waste sector will account for about 6% of Nevada's greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. And if you didn't know, landfills release methane, which is a potent greenhouse gas. So, implementing ways to reduce waste generation and increase reuse and recycling efforts can help avoid future greenhouse gas emissions associated with landfills. Additionally, as you can see in the graphic on the slide, if you take a life cycle approach to materials and waste management, you can see that there's several points in a material's life cycle where greenhouse gases are emitted. It's not just happening at the landfill. In the example of paper here, recycling paper reduces the amount of wood harvested from forests, reduces greenhouse gas emissions from the combustion of the fuels to transport that lumber to the mill. Um, and then it also, if you recycle, it avoids the future methane emissions that would have occurred if the paper had been landfilled. So while greenhouse gases are emitted in the recycling scenario, typically these emissions are less. And then also you have the trees that are conserved and the fuel. And then, so moving on to sustainability initiatives, two ongoing initiatives BSMM is involved with that involve sustainability is the annual statewide recycling data collection survey and the annual recycling grant. So, for the annual recycling rate survey, every year recyclers report how many tons of recyclable materials they collect and kind of just in general where that material goes. So, does it stay in Nevada? Does it leave Nevada? And then this allows us to calculate the recycling rate for the state. And we post that data on the NDEP website. We haven't finished the 2023 data yet, but the 2022 state recycling rate was about 23%. And then for the recycling grant, each year in the early summer, we accept proposals from municipalities, nonprofits, schools, school districts, tribes, and the Nevada system of higher education. And the grant supports projects that help divert materials from the landfill, including projects that help increase recycling access or improve the quality of materials that are collected. And then last year, we awarded the grant funding to the City of Las Vegas and UNLV. The City of Las Vegas held multiple education sessions to teach people how to compost, and then they gave away over 100 composters to attendees. And then UNLV used the funding to improve their drive-up community recycling drop-off location. Additionally, we recently completed a statewide email survey where we surveyed Nevada residents regarding their recycling knowledge and perceptions towards recycling in their communities. And we're currently finishing up the report for that survey and should have that published soon. And we're going to be using the results of that survey to create and design education and outreach materials. And then we also have several upcoming initiatives. We're planning a variety of studies to fill some data gaps that we identified in the Sustainable Materials Management Plan. And most of the funding for these studies is coming from federal EPA through the Solid Waste Infrastructure for Recycling Grant Program, which is a mouthful to say. These studies will help us better understand the makeup of Nevada's waste streams, as well as identifying ways to improve access to recycling in the rural areas. We are currently finishing up contracts for some of these studies, so I can't answer any questions about them, but they will be starting soon. Another initiative we're currently involved with is the Partners for a Sustainable Nevada, PSN. PSN was formed in the summer of 2021 with the goal to bring together government entities, nonprofits, and businesses who are interested in improving sustainability in Nevada. And the initial goals that brought the group together were to create a professional network of sustainability experts, explore policy changes, and become Nevada's go to resource on sustainability matters. And the mission of the PSN is to change the way Nevadans think about sustainability for our future generations by identifying and promoting opportunities to advance and expand sustainability efforts statewide. And this year, PSN has put together the Nevada Climate Forum, which meets once a month to discuss topics such as distributed generation, building electrification and efficiency, and closing the loop on end of life materials for renewable energy and electrification equipment. And those have discussions planned out each month into next year. And finally, to bring this all together, how can you go all in? So for businesses, nonprofits, and government entities, consider joining PSN. And you can reach out to me for more information about that. And we have a really active climate team within PSN. For Nevada residents, my advice is to be mindful of the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. Always be on the lookout for ways to reduce your waste, even if it's building simple habits like using reusable shopping bags instead of plastic shopping bags, and saying no to straws and plastic utensils when ordering takeout. And then for recycling, know what your local hauler's recycling rules are. Learn what can and cannot go in the recycling bin. For example, don't put plastic shopping bags or trash bags in the recycling bin. That ends up getting tangled up in the, the recycler's machinery that sorts the different materials. Also, don't put batteries in the recycling bin. That can eventually lead to safety concerns. There's other avenues that those particular items can be recycled through. And there's a lot of resources out there for you to use if you have questions about some of those materials. So for Clark County, you can use NDEP's website. The Southern Nevada Health District also has a great website, and they have a web page on there called Clark County Recycles. And on that web page, you can search by material and find locations that accept those particular materials. And then also don't forget about Republic Services website and their resources too if you have questions about what can and cannot go in your recycling bin. And we also have the Nevada Recycles hotline, which is the 800 number that's located or that's on the slide there. So you can always call that if you have questions as well. And then finally, for eligible entities, again, going back, municipalities, schools, nonprofits, consider applying for the state recycling grant at the beginning of next summer. And if you're not on our listserv to get those announcements about the grant, you can go to NDEP's main webpage, and there's a section near the bottom that says sign up for newsletters. And you can click the get notices button, and there's like a quick little form to fill out so you can get on that email list. And I just wanted to end on a note of thanks to Clark County for letting us present our sustainability initiatives. And thank you to everybody that listened to my presentation and who is taking an interest in making Nevada more sustainable. And Olivia, I'll open it up to questions. And hopefully I'll try to answer them the best I can. And if for some reason I can follow up and get back to people.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Bree, for your wonderful presentation about the sustainability goals, materials management, and stakeholder engagement. It's very exciting to see all the innovative work that NDEP is doing and all those who are involved in many of those efforts. So thank you for sharing those resources. But yeah, I will now pull up some of the audience questions. The first question is Are there any new programs or initiatives introduced in the 2022 plan to support businesses and households in reducing waste?
Yeah, man, I'm trying to remember all the 70 different action items. Um, the big one, so reducing waste, I I would go towards, like what are your everyday habits? So for like residents, what are you doing that you're throwing out the most? Kind of do like a mini waste audit. This is for businesses and homeowners. Try to do a mini waste audit of, and figure out what is the most you're throwing away, and is there an alternative to that product? Um, for programs, it's more of an education thing that we're focused on as NDEP with recycling and waste um, for businesses. Um, but yeah.
Thank you. Another question about the plan that you shared. What metrics or benchmarks are used to measure success of the plan? And can you share the progress now that it is 2024?
Yeah, so the main one that we track metrics for is the recycling rate. Um, and the recycling rate's kind of an interesting metric because there's two components to it, right? It's how much material is being recycled versus, so you have the denominator, how much is recycled versus total waste plus recyclable materials. So there's two different ways to increase the recycling rate. One is to obviously have more recyclable material collected, but the other thing is to also reduce waste. So, that's kind of right now, that's really the only metric we are tracking. Part of the plan does call out to find different ways to track sustainability with regards to sustainable materials management. And some of those plans, studies I outlined in our initiatives, like the waste characterization study, that's going to help us better pinpoint metrics. So when it comes time to redo this plan in 2027, um, we can have better metrics. But right now, it's just the recycling rate.
Great, thank you. Next question. What are the current composting practices and programs in Southern Nevada?
I know there's some businesses out there that do composting in Clark County. Um, Other than the businesses that have programs, composting is not a huge market in Nevada currently. And one of our studies, I know it's going back to the studies, but we do have a lot of data gaps, is figuring out that economic impact of, improving or having more composting done in the state. So currently, it's just a handful of businesses doing composting in Nevada.
Thank you. And last question, unless anyone else in the audience wants to add some to the chat, is any anticipation for new or revised policy slash regulations in the next legislative session?
That one I am not involved with, so I do not have an answer for that one.
Yeah, I'm not too sure, but I know there is a lot of different organizations and places to stay updated for those new legislative sessions and the policies surrounding those. Um, And then another question popped up about when are any community events happening? Does PSN or Clark County host? So I could speak on Clark County. So we do host a one or two recycling drives a year. So one in the fall, usually one in the spring. So be on the lookout for November. We're planning one electronic waste recycling. Um, so we did this last year, and so you could bring in any electronics to be recycled. But details aren't confirmed yet, but we are planning to host one in November. We also do battery recycling year round. So if you have any batteries, they could be alkaline or lithium ion. We do recycle those at a few different Clark County community centers or the building on Russell and Decatur. So there's a website on our event page that you're viewing on right now. So if you go to upcoming actions, or I'm sorry, if you go to current actions and you click the battery recycling tab, you could find the addresses where you could go drop off those batteries. Um, one location is the Winchester Dondero Cultural Center in East Las Vegas. So you could do that, or you could always email us if you have a large amount of batteries you're trying to recycle. So keep saving those batteries that you collect from your home and business to be recycled. Please don't put them in the trash or recycling. Another thing we do is the eyeglass recycling. So if you wear glasses, sunglasses, we support some Boy Scout organizations that collect and fix and donate different eyeglasses. So we do that as well. Same area as our battery recycling. They collect eyeglasses as well. But you could stay up to date on all of our events on the event page you're viewing the presentation on. And then I'll pass it over to Bree if she has any upcoming things.
So for PSN, it's the Nevada Climate Forum. So if you Google Nevada Climate Forum, that'll pop up. We actually have our August event here at 2 p.m. But it's the third Wednesday of, it's usually the third Wednesday of each month. And then, just when you go to that webpage, there's a link for each event and you can sign up for the ones you're interested in. And then for NDEP, our main events usually happen in the springtime. We did a Mercury collection event here in Las Vegas. I want to say March or April. So usually once a year we do that. And then we usually do Earth Day, an Earth Day event as well.
Great. Yeah, we host all sorts of types of events. We also promote others events as well. So if um, you're signed up for our newsletter, I shared events that's all around Clark County sustainability wise. So it's a really good place to one-stop shop and get events. But that is all the questions we have for today. So thank you all for joining and taking the opportunity to learn more about waste management. And a last thank you to Bree for delivering such a great presentation. And before we end it all, I encourage everyone to visit NDEP's website and all the resources that Bree mentioned. And of course, the All In Clark County .com/events website where you could register for more upcoming events. Like I mentioned, sign up for our newsletter, follow us on social media, and stay updated on sustainability resources and programs throughout Clark County. But that is it for today's webinar. Thank you.